how can you embrace, let's say, leadership? How can you embrace your expertise? How can you showcase the fact that you're here on a mission and you're able to help people?
Welcome to Here's What I Learned. I'm your host, Jackie Hayes, Systems Strategist and Operations Support Specialist. My guest and I share the lessons we've learned about making value-based decisions, leading our teams in new ways, and rejecting traditional business advice when that advice doesn't align with the life we want to live. If you're a solopreneur or small business owner tired of the same old scale for the sake of scaling way of doing business, then you'll want to stick around and take a listen. So put in those earbuds, get your morning mile started, and enjoy the episode. On today's episode of Here's What I Learned, I'm talking with Steph Wharton. Steph is a leadership and visibility coach and speaker on a mission to help underrepresented folks amplify their impact beyond social media by confidently embracing their speaker identity. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi, Steph. Let's start this whole conversation with, what does it mean to you to run your business your way?
So I think this actually, for me, the answer has varied a lot along the lines. And as I've grown my business within the last couple of years, and I think if I were to look at the common theme throughout it all, honestly, it's all about learning to trust myself. So one of the things that I always catch my brain, because it's a very human brain with a lot of doubts spiraling around there, is it's hard with comparison. It's hard with so many people doing things differently in the online space not to become influenced by it, right? It looks good. It looks appealing. It looks interesting. It might even seem like a strategy or a concept or something that would actually feel really good for you to do. And as much as sometimes that is the case, I have experienced in the past where my own intuition almost took a backseat. And I feel like I'm in my era where that's no longer acceptable. And if there's something that is just nudging at me and I'm like, I want to do X, I want to do it this way, I want to do more of that, less of that. It's more about just trusting that my choice, my decisions, there's obviously a reason why I'm feeling called to do it that way. And just trusting that it's gonna work, that it's gonna be fully incredible. And instead of only going like 50% in and doing the thing, but still trusting other people's expertise or other people's advice more, is to just go all in 100% on the way that I want to do things in my business and trusting that that's exactly the right choice for me.
I like that you mentioned that going all in versus like 50% and then still kind of, holding on to what other people think. And I think that's a really common thing for people to do. And as a coach, I'm going to guess it's really common for you to see that in your clients. How do you help them hit that 100%?
I think it's a balance of making sure that strategically, whatever it is that they're trying to do is genuinely coming from an internal place and not from a place of so-and-so said this would be successful. So when it's your own compass, whether it's because it's very in tune with your values or it allows you to step into whatever kind of lifestyle you want to lead more or whatever it is, but it's internal, right? Like you're making that conscious decision that is such a good fit, then that's the main key there, because then we're not trying to force it. You're not trying to become somebody else in order to make it work and be like a good fit. So strategically making sure that it's a good fit there. And the other part, it's mindset. There's going to be doubts. There's 100% going to be doubts. Like maybe you'll go all in today and I'll have those conversations with my clients where it's like, we've made the decision. It's so exciting. This is exactly what I've been meaning to do. And then a week later or a month later or whatever, I'll be like, so I'm doing X, Y, Z. And this is like completely unrelated to the first or original amazing idea they had. And it's like, no. Okay. So what's happening here? Is it just a seasonality? Is it capacity wise? Or is there a fear? Like, is there something underlying, like some story that you're telling yourself that you can't actually go all in? And that's where we get to have the conversations around that and figure out what's actually going on behind the scenes that's holding you back from doing the thing that you are so excited and so desperately want to take action on.
When you think of in the past, the moments that you have struggled to go all in, what was that like for you? What kind of thoughts were going on in your head and how did you overcome that?
I can actually think of a very specific example, and it's very related to a transition that I'm kind of going through right now that I have been going within the past couple months. And it specifically had to do with wanting to release a bit of the pressure to be on social media. But what would happen to me is that every time I made that conscious decision, I'm not going to utilize Instagram as my main marketing platform, is I would consciously release that. Then I would no longer feel the pressure to be on socials. So then I would come back re-energized because it's like, well, I don't have to be here. So let me have fun because I personally, genuinely really enjoy socials. So it became this constant cycle where I would make the decision, jump back on it from a good place, but then go back into pressurized energy. And I think one of the things that is really helping me right now is having a deeper reason for wanting to do that. So for me right now, I don't have the capacity to be on socials. That doesn't have to be your reason, but my capacity is now essentially being taken over by my new baby, my son. And that is going to be a big priority going forward. So it's that and my clients, right? Like I don't got time to be creating content 24/7, even if it's batched, it's just not my priority. And I think it's such a much deeper reason to want to do things differently that it's helping me stay more connected to why I want to do things differently in the first place. And I think I didn't have that before. It was more just, oh, I just don't like the pressure that I put on myself. I don't like the negative thoughts. I don't like the burnout. I don't like the spirals. And as much as that can be your driving force, to me, it wasn't enough. And right now it feels like my other quote unquote priorities are just so important that I am valuing it more and I wasn't before.
As the visibility coach, I'm sure people are like, whoa, wait a minute. You're not going to be on socials unless you feel like it. So what changes have you made and what have you prioritized?
I've actually flipped my entire marketing and visibility stack, if you will. So basically the platforms and the channels that I choose to market through. So for me, visibility is just about essentially showcasing your brand. It's about connecting with people, but you get to do it in whatever way you want to. So of course, a lot of my clients, they come to me because they want to embrace speaking as their identity, and that's how they want to get visible. But that doesn't change the fact that you can embrace your speaker identity through so many different channels, right? So it could be written form, it could be audio, it could be video, it could be whatever you want it to be. So what I've been doing is I've been looking at all the different ways that I've been diversifying my marketing, which for me historically has been social media at the top. That's been the main priority, followed by a mix of podcasting, email, and then speaking engagements and collaborations. And I've decided, based on what I've experienced in the past, based on what I see with my clients, that when you're going all in on collaboration community, and basically it's like a joint effort where you get to have fun and amplify other people's voices, other people's brands, the energy and the return on that can be a lot greater with less input. So I've flipped the entire script, and instead of having speaking as my lowest priority, it has now become my top one. So now my marketing channels essentially are speaking and collaborations, followed by podcasting and email. And now social media, if I want to be on there, the way that I'm doing it is like, okay, this gets to be fun. I get to reshare other people's content. I get to share what I'm doing, my offers, all that stuff, but it's now not coming from a place of like, I have to do these things in order to be successful, in order to sign clients. It's more of the cherry on top, just to be social and stay connected with people.
I like how you mentioned there that you've seen historically what has worked and what has worked for you and what has worked for your clients. And I think there sometimes can be this following your gut, but sometimes it's not really our gut. We think it is. Or it's like, oh, I really want to spend all my time on Instagram because that's what I really want to do, but that's not necessarily where your clients are. So you kind of sound like you're like not only looking at what your gut is telling you, but also like historically what has worked and not worked for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is the argument where you have to pay attention to where your clients are hanging out. And I think to some extent that can be very true if you are dealing with a very particular business where there could be additional factors. Like there's a lot of nuance there where maybe it's a local business, maybe it's in person, maybe there's some added factors that could affect where they're hanging out. But realistically, when you look at people as a whole, we're all so freaking different that you're going to be running into people that all make purchasing decisions differently, that all consume content differently. So realistically, you could almost utilize any single platform and still attract people. You just may not attract everybody, right? Because of course, not everybody's on Instagram, not everybody's on TikTok, not everybody's on YouTube, whatever that might be. So I think when you start to own what feels the most fun and just trust the process, as annoying as that might sound, is you start to build so much self-trust, which is what we were talking about at the beginning. And it's just like you trust your concepts, your decisions, your methods, your strategies, that you show up with so much certainty that the people that are consuming content in that way and that do make decisions in that way to purchase, to invest, to etc., are going to be resonating and paying attention to the content you're putting out. So yeah, it's a bit of a mix, but I think there's a lot of trust that goes in there. That when you make decisions from a place of like, this is amazing, this is how I'm going to feel the most passionate and excited to serve my community, that's going to go a much longer way than trying to almost like figure out the formula where it's like, oh, where are people hanging out? Like we want to take it with a grain of salt. We want to consider it without letting it take the wheel.
So when it comes to doing business your own way, you're talking about trusting yourself. And I know one of the things that you help your clients with is owning their expertise, which kind of comes to trusting yourself in this. How does that play into everything? Like when somebody is starting a business, are they starting without like any background whatsoever? Or do they have some stuff? And how do they dig in there and find that?
Okay. So are we talking people that already have a business idea, or you're starting from scratch?
I would say people who, let's say they've been in business for like under a year. So, but they have a business that they're now trying to get out there and market themselves and socialize and collaborate, etc.
I think it's really important to, if you need to, strip away the labels. There's a lot of people that I work with that when it comes to being a leader and being an authority, the words themselves get you stuck because you're defining those words in a way that almost keeps you out of the box, right? It's like you can't check the box because you don't have, let's say, 10 years experience, or because somebody hasn't said that you are an authority, or somebody hasn't invited you to speak on or interview on their podcast. And because you aren't able to check all those boxes, all of a sudden you can't check the box of, hey, I'm a speaker, I'm a leader, I'm this, I'm that. So it almost, as a default, you end up deciding that you do not belong in the room because you don't fit the definition of these words. So when we strip those, we start to get more creative with how can you embrace, let's say, leadership? How can you embrace your expertise? How can you showcase the fact that you're here on a mission and you're able to help people? So now we can look at so many other reasons why you belong and why you are worth taking up space. And it could be anything and everything. Like if I look at, there's certain programs that I've launched, I've promoted them without any social proof. So do you really need several years of proof that this program has worked and that you've served millions of clients? No, you can have a business, you can have an idea, you can have an offer, all the things, but you don't need every single marketing tactic that can help you sign clients. You can still do it. You can still showcase the value that you bring to the table without having all the extra bells and whistles. Those are just going to help you, but they're not going to make or break your ability to succeed and to sell and to build a business that you're very proud of. So I think it's almost just realizing that there's so many ways to go about things, and there's so many ways to step into your identity as that quote unquote leader, that just grab onto what feels really freaking good. And if that just starts with, I'm on a mission to help people, well, what's that mission, right? Like, how do you want to help people? Let's really tap into that and allow that desire to help people to lead everything. Because now it's also not about you. It's not about how can I prove that I'm worthy, but it's how can I help you? How can I help my community? And it almost like decenters the entire conversation, and it releases a lot of the pressure because it's not about making sales. It's about helping your community.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I like what you said about like letting go of the titles or something. When I first left like my big first job, which was to be a director of programs at a science museum, Okay, so that's a very specific field. That's a very specific thing. And I struggled a lot when it came with like resumes. People would be like, well, that's not applicable in this, whatever. And it's like, well, here's the long list of things that I did, like budgets and goals and objectives and like managing staff. And it's really funny because when I started my business, I did the exact same thing that the employers were doing of like, well, I've never done this before and forgot to look at like all the things that I have been doing for the last 20 some years and how they were applicable to everything. So there was expertise in there. It's just maybe in a niche of something else, but it's still the same skills.
Exactly. I think we do that. Like we almost make that mistake so many times where we put ourselves in, we set these expectations that everything has to look a very specific way. So the titles, even like when it comes to the kind of expertise that we bring, something that I see so many people getting stuck on is the word of value. It's like, how can I showcase value? How can I showcase that there's enough value here for people to want to listen to me and respect me and want to invest? And it's like, well, let's again deconstruct that word. What does value even mean? Like, does it have to be something that's like very traditionally monetizable, or can you bring value by sharing stories that people can resonate with? Like that is valuable in itself. You're helping people feel seen in ways that they haven't felt before, right? So when we deconstruct the titles, the words that we're using in our marketing, even all these thoughts that we're having, it allows us to, instead of try and like fit and force ourselves in this box where we have to be a certain way and act a certain way and do things a certain way, even our business, right? Everything feels so like if you don't do it that way, then it won't work. And it's like, no, once you start deconstructing all that, all of a sudden there's no more rules. So you get to find ways that actually feel good and you experience less resistance. And it's so much more rewarding that way because you build a business that you're really proud of, something that you're meant to be doing versus having to grow it a certain way and then realize now we got to deconstruct the business because we built it in a way that just doesn't feel good anymore.
So earlier you mentioned that your family has expanded and you mentioned a little bit about, how things have changed, like the priorities in your life. How has your definition of, what it means to run a business your way and how you have gone about running your business now changed since you became a mom?
It has changed a lot. I've been back in business now for a month and a half since I took my mat leave. And towards the tail end of the mat leave, that was kind of the conversation that I kept having and spinning around in my mind. And I'm like, well, how do I want to do things? Like, what do I want to run in terms of programs? How do I want to market? How do I want to show up? All the things. And I've made so many changes. I mean, I've deconstructed my entire product suite. I've deconstructed how I market and what I want to prioritize. And I think one of the biggest things is trying to figure out my capacity, like the capacity that I used to have. Sure, I went through seasons where I would work 1 hour a day. Then I went through seasons where I worked 5 hours a day. It could be anywhere between 5 hours a week to 20 hours a week. And when I was really, really busy, I would go even beyond that, right? So it really depended what my priorities were. But now I've got 2 days a week. That's it. That's when my mother-in-law is coming in to babysit. Like that, the rest of the time, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday is always Mateo time. So I'm 100% like feeding, nappy changes, like putting him down for naps, soothing him, all this stuff. So just being really honest with the capacity that I have and trying to figure out, okay, what's important to me? Like, what do I really want to do in terms of offers? What feels that I could do from a place of this gets to be fun and it doesn't matter how many people join. I'm going to be like 100% in on this, right? So I'm starting to do a lot of that, even restructuring how I launch. I've decided that there's this one program I'm not going to be launching and it's all going to be behind the scenes. And it is scary. This is an experiment that I'm running right now because I've always launched and done this huge public like marketing thing for every single one of my programs. But I'm like, I don't have capacity for that anymore. There's no way that I can show up the way that I used to want to show up. So instead of adding that pressure, it's just basically just being brutally honest with myself. And although scary, making the decisions that I always wish I could have made. And now I'm like, I've got no choice. So I think other than like auditing and making all these decisions, I think it's just accepting that I get to make the decision and then just move forward without second guessing. And that does require a lot of inner work, a lot of reassurance, self-reassurance. But honestly, it's kind of cool. Like for anybody who doesn't have like a new baby that all of a sudden is, oh, I've got this other priority and I don't even have the time to worry about whether I'm making the right decision or not. I would definitely suggest trying to find something in your life that can, maybe not literally, but that can be all consuming, so that when you do find, like, make the decisions that feel really freaking good and they're like, oh, this is my way of doing this thing, you have no time to second guess it, because you're off, you're going to go bouldering, because you're going to go Latin dancing, because you're going to, I don't know, go practice for a show, you're going to like join theater or something like that. Like just find that passion, that all consuming thing, so that you learn to trust yourself, as opposed to just like sit there with your thoughts, which, I mean, there's something to be said about like getting familiar with your thoughts. Absolutely. But why sit there for 5 hours second guessing every single your decision you're making, when really what you'd rather be doing is going off Latin dancing in the first place? Like just go do the thing. And then with a 1 hour slot, maybe not 1 hour, 1 hour slot that you have in the day, then make those decisions, take that action and move on. And I think I spent so much time second guessing and not trusting myself. And this limited capacity that I now have is just allowing me to finally just make the decision, move on, and not ever look back.
So I and most of the listeners are in the United States, which has an abysmal maternity leave, plan of, obviously, because that's United States. But as a business owner, I can see a lot of people being really nervous about this idea of actually taking maternity leave that is beyond the 6 weeks that we get around here, and that's not even necessarily paid. I know you took longer than that, and I know that you worked to set yourself up for that. What was that process like for you?
It was a lot of pre-prep. Honestly, so it's funny. In the States, clearly it's the complete opposite. In Canada, where I'm at, it's 12 months that you get just by default. I mean, if you have a traditional corporate job and all the things. So for me to only take 3 months was like this huge mind fuck. I was like, I'm only taking 3 months? Like, this is bad. So I definitely had to work through that internal narrative that where I was comparing myself to every other person in my country. But honestly, yes, I beyond agree. Like I've come to terms, or to a state where I'm immensely proud and happy at the fact that I was able to create that space to take those 3 months off. And it was definitely needed, just to be able to adjust to the new lifestyle and the demand and the lack of sleep and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely very taxing. So what I did really was a lot of preparation ahead of time. So I had to make intentional decisions on what my priorities were for those 3 months. So for me, what I really wanted to do was to be able to maintain that kind of like brand awareness, visibility, like be connected with my community essentially without having to be on. So there's so many different ways that you could technically do that. For me, what I chose to do was to pre-record 3 months worth of podcast content and then schedule out 3 months worth of emails that would either accompany the podcast content or be unrelated to that. But essentially for those 3 months, everything was set up. And when it comes to social media, there's the whole concept. I know you're very well familiar with it, of course, the Instagram grid. And what I decided was to do an maternity leave Instagram grid. And essentially it was just a way for people to connect with me. And it was really freaking cool. Like I think between all the different facets, like people could either find me through the podcast, through email, I could continue to build relationships through social media. If anybody found me or didn't realize that I was gone and we'd been connected for a while, there was always these little touch points. And it was awesome to just be able to, if I so decided to open up my inbox, just to like clear it out, because there was no way I was going to be catching up with 3 months worth of emails. So every now and then I was like, oh, unread. It was cool to see that there was conversations happening and that there was people reaching out and just saying that they resonated with some of the stuff that I was sharing. And to be able to do that and maintain that momentum so that when I came back and did my first launch post maternity leave, I at least didn't feel like I was starting from scratch. It didn't matter if I was or wasn't. Like, it didn't matter if people were tapped into my content or not, which thankfully they were. But it was more about me learning to trust that I had put in all the work beforehand, which took about a month and a half before going on the 3-month maternity leave, to know that I did the thing. I did everything in my power to ensure that I was still marketing, that I was still doing the thing. So now let's freaking go guns blazing. Let's do this like mini launch. I say mini because it's like a low ticket. So it's definitely a lot more pressure, less pressure. And it felt a lot easier to come back. I felt like I, to a certain extent, had never left.
I will say, as somebody who, obviously I've been following you. For those of you who are listening, Steph has been my coach on and off as time has gone by. And I forgot, like multiple times, I forgot that you were on maternity leave. And then you'd post something on your stories and I'd be like, oh yeah, because I was still getting emails and I was still seeing you on Instagram and I was still, the podcasts were still going out. So it was like you never left and yet you were on maternity leave and enjoying yourself. And so it's obvious that it's possible with planning that you can manage to have that maternity leave if you want it, or paternity leave if you're wanting that, and still run your business. Go ahead.
I was going to say 100%. And for the sake of transparency too, what I wanted to share is that when it came to Instagram, even though I had the grid, I actually went through a 3-phase, let's say, way of showing up. So the first month, I did not show up at all in my stories, other than I believe once a week I would share like a baby update or something like that. Then the second month, I started to show up more. So my stories were very much personal content, but it was still like every other day or something like that. So I started to just do it for fun, just so that I would let's say, like, build the habit of what could it feel like to quote unquote be on my phone while still being off on maternity leave. And by the third month, what I had actually started to do is I started having fun with threads. So I started posting content at first for fun, then it turned a little bit more businessy like. And I think that for me, having that very slow progression with social, where it was primarily fun and almost non-existent, and then started to slowly ramp up, it created a very nice transition from the last month of maternity leave to the first month of starting back on my business, where I didn't feel like I was going from 0 to 100. I was like, okay, I can kind of do this. I can soothe a baby. And then while I'm nap trapped, I can go on socials and catch up with people and share content, either about my life or business, irrelevant. But I think that for me was really good, and it really made me feel more comfortable. Like I really had my own back with it. But I just thought that'd be important to share, because for anybody who's looking to take a lot of time off, you get to do it in any way, shape, or form. But it doesn't mean that you don't have to show up, and it also doesn't mean that you have to show up. You get to find your own perfect kind of balance based on what feels good to you.
Steph, what would Steph of right now tell Steph on the first day that she started her business?
Celebrate all the tiny little wins more. I have seen so many people celebrate so hard when they sign their first client, or when they do their first whatever. And I remember at the time I was like, well, I can't celebrate that, because then it looks like I'm just starting and it looks like I'm not good enough. The amount of stories that I would tell myself back then were like, it just wasn't enough, right? Like maybe I would celebrate privately, but I would never celebrate it publicly. And then I would go on and see other people who would be celebrating their first like lifetime sales, like 20K. And they were celebrating it so hard. And I was so used to seeing people only celebrating I was going to say 6K, 6 figures. So that became the thing that was worthy of celebrating. It's like, no. Like that 20,000 that you just made lifetime sales, regardless whether it took you a month or it took you an entire year or two, that is so worth celebrating. And I wish I had done that when I started. Like, I wish I had just like relished in every single moment and publicly been like, this is amazing, because it is. It's so freaking cool. Whatever it is that you're creating in that moment, even if this is your first day in business and you just, I don't know, purchase your domain, like that might feel a little bit small, but it's like, that's worth celebrating. You're creating this little business with your own 2 hands. And that's so incredible. I wish I did that for sure.
And I love that that's your piece of advice, because working with you, that is one of the things that I have done a lot better on, is learning to celebrate the little things in my business. So, where can people find you?
I would say on Instagram, which is hilarious, because here I am flipping my entire marketing stack and not even prioritizing it. But I know that I will continue to show up, even if it's more on like a personal brand and like, this is where I'm speaking at. And like, these are the people that I'm hanging out with and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to connect with a real human being and build relationships, then Instagram is the place to find me.
Excellent. And there will be links to find Steph in the show notes. So make sure you check those out. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to another episode of Here's What I Learned. You can find the show notes and transcripts at jackiehayes.online/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to leave a review and follow the show. Be sure to find me on Instagram at JackieHayes_OBM and let me know what you learned from this episode. Catch you next time on Here's What I Learned.